I work for Bersin, a part of Deloitte Consulting LLP, and what we do is we're the human capital research and advisory arm of Deloitte Consulting. So we study people practices, including people analytics, but I'm not going to talk about people analytics today. I'm going to talk about future of work. And you're going to get a sneak peek on our study on future of work. So we're not done studying yet, but we have done a survey and we're analyzing it, and these are some initial findings of that. So hopefully that's going to resonate with you. So I'm going to start with the context. And I put a pie chart in there because I couldn't do a presentation in a people analytics conference without a pie chart and didn't have any other place to put it. And I'll give Dave credit for that because he used that first, my colleague Dave. We're going to talk a little bit about the context of future of work. Then we're going to talk about the future of talent and how we can move beyond talent management to workforce transformation. And then we'll finish up with some so what and what's next, and hopefully a little bit of time for questions as well. So I'll start with a picture, and this doesn't look like the future of work, right? This looks very old-fashioned. In fact, this was the first cell phone that was invented first used in the 80s. My dad, growing up, I grew up in Austria, hence the accent, in case you're wondering. My dad went to Japan in the 80s, actually for work, and he came back and he told us, "You won't believe what I saw in Japan. You won't believe what I saw. I saw people walking on the streets with phones in their hands, and they were talking on the phones." And I'm like, I can't believe it. And these phones, by the way, they weighed 1 kilo. So imagine like walking with this phone in your hand, 1 kilo, and that's not that long ago. And I could not imagine it. I couldn't imagine how people could actually walk on the streets with their phones in their hands, because of course we had the rotary phones, or the landline phones, but I couldn't imagine the things that we have today. But everything you can imagine is real, right? I couldn't imagine like some 30, 40 years later what we do today and what the future of work looks like. And when I talk about the future of work, I brought my phone up here because this is a prop for me for when we talk about the future of work. Because this, of course, is what we have today. And this has changed our lives and our work in ways that we never thought possible. Right? If you think about this, this is not a phone, right? You don't use your phone. I never talk on my phone. Like, if you think about how much time you spend talking on your phone, you never talk on your phone. But you do everything else on your phone. And we've become so dependent on this, of course, that there's like withdrawal or like programs that make you less dependent on your phone, right? You pay money for somebody to take your phone away from you for a weekend or something like that. But when we talk about the future of work, we see really 7 trends, 7 disruptors impacting the future of work. And 3 of them have to do with technology, but 4 of them have to do with people and jobs. So the first one is this, right? So I just read a statistic that 1 in 3 people in the world have access to this. Of course, in this room, everybody has at least one of these. But if you think about the entire world, 1 in 3 people has access to a smartphone today. And this gives us information, access to information of the entire history of mankind and all the information that you could ever think possible. Of course, we use it to take pictures of food and watch cat videos and such, but different story. But this gives us information to insights that we never thought possible, right? So technology being everywhere is one of them. AI, cognitive computing, robotic process automation, all of these technologies have become a lot more affordable and a lot cheaper in the last 10 years or so. It used to cost on average $500,000 to use AI as an organization, and now it costs on average $22,000. So whatever the exact numbers, it's much more affordable. It's everywhere, basically. And if you want somebody to be interested in your technology, you just say you use AI, and then it's going to be interesting, right? And important and all of that. So AI, cognitive, and all of that are really, really key. And then the last piece, technology related, is what we call a tsunami of data. So with all of these AI, cognitive, all of these new tools, more data 9 times more data has actually been created in the last 2 years than in the entire history of mankind. Just take that in, right? But is it all that data, is it information or is it just noise? And related to the cognitive AI and all of these kind of things, we hear a lot of concerns about our jobs going away. Are there robots coming for our jobs, right? And we don't see it like that. We don't see it like that. We see actually a lot of opportunity to leverage technology and to create better work for people. And it requires actually what Dr. PAFOW talked about, work redesign and job redesign. So I'll talk a little bit more about that. So that's the first people-related impact already, or disruptor in the future of work, are jobs going away. So jobs vulnerable to automation. The next people-related impact or disruptor is the nature of careers are changing. We're working longer and longer in life, while skills, the half-life of skills is becoming shorter and shorter. So we need to reinvent ourselves, re-educate ourselves all the time, because the half-life of a skill, technical skill, is like 2.5 to 5 years now. So half-life of skills, careers are changing. Diversity and generational, diversity of people, basically of the workforce, is another disruptor. So with new technologies, we can connect the world and have work done across the globe together. And what that means, though, that is our workforce is much more diverse. We have 5 generations at work today. So how can we leverage all that diversity, and how can we create an environment of inclusion where everybody can do their best work? And then the last disruptor is also a people-related one, what we call an explosion of alternative work. So more and more people want to work in different work scenarios that don't require them to work in your organization as an employee. And what does that mean for organizations and how we think about our workforce? So all of these things are happening. And by the way, I put these pictures up because this future, all of these pictures, it's already here. So the future is already here, and that's really great. And what we see when we talk with leaders across the globe, they all ask similar questions that have to do with things like, how do we balance short-term efficiency with long-term opportunity for growth and development and growing our business? So how do we balance that? Dr. PAFOW talked about firing people because you need to make your next quota. How do we balance that short-term mindset to the longer-term opportunity of what we can create for people and for our business? How do we help people be more productive wherever they are? Do we need to rethink how people manage, how people work together? And my favorite one is the quote in the middle here. And these are all actual quotes that we heard from business leaders. How do we need to change the way that we think about work itself? Because we are really applying old paradigms to new technology and new ways of working and all of these disruptors. We need to rethink what work actually is. It's a little bit like trying to send a fax with your smartphone, right? It won't work. And that's an old paradigm for your new technology or for new environment. So what I'm going to talk about, and I'll build it up, a framework that we have put together, how to think about all of these questions and get your arms around it, because nothing is going to happen. A little bit very similar to, if nobody wants to start something because they don't want to fail, and it's really hard and it's really complex, that whole future of work, how do we get our arms around? So we have put together a framework to think about that. So the first thing you want to do is start with the why. Why do you want to use new technologies? Why do you want to use the alternative workforce? Why do you maybe consider workplace flexibility or something like that? Why do you want to do that? And most organizations are in the lower left-hand corner of this. And in the first column, and I'll build it up, the first area is cost and efficiency. So why do you want to do that when people say, or organizations say, we want to deploy bots or use AI? Is it a cost play? Is it a cost reduction play? Do we do it to meet our quotas, to make our numbers? But what happens there is, when you think about the workforce, you reduce them to the throughput that they can have, right? So you reduce them to just do more work faster, better, cheaper, are mostly just faster and cheaper. And what you offer to your customers is a low price offering. And usually you get into this downward spiral where you cut cost, and you cut service. The workplace becomes worse and worse. The workforce quits. You're going to cut more and more until nothing is left. So not a very good paradigm. And of course, efficiency is important, but it's not everything. So the next area I want organizations to look at is, what's the value that we can create with new automation, for example? Is there something where we can grow our business? Is there something where we can help people develop their career? Because the number one reason why people quit in organizations today is not because of their manager anymore, it's because of lack of development opportunities. So is there something where we can give people better work and grow their skill set and help them be something that they wanted to be? And for the customers, it might mean that you create an appealing offering, not just a low-cost offering. So think about the phone, for example. A cheaper phone, that's not exactly what most people are looking for. Is it a better phone? Do we have new functionality? Do we have new ways of using it and new applications and like better pictures or whatever we want to talk about? So that's the value column. And then the last thing that organizations need to look at is there meaning beyond the organization? Is there meaningful work that we give to people? And can we meet new customer aspirations? So can we meet some unmet needs that customers never said they wanted to have? Can we help people that work for us do the work what they aspire to? So that's what the meaning means. And you got to start with this, right? And you got to measure it too, to the same point that Dr. Pfeffer made. You got to measure it, right? So you got to say, why am I doing any of this? And then you got to put measures around it. And that's why people analytics is so important and how it comes full circle. So after you've determined and balanced, not just focusing on cost, but also how we create more value, how we create more meaning, then you can go about thinking about what is actually changing in your work environment. And I love this quote because it really captures the meaningful work. If we want to help people do their best work, we got to give them something so they can have meaning in their work. And how we get meaning is improving other people's lives. So bigger than ourselves, basically. So now that we've thought about what we want to do and why we want to do it, there's actually not the future of work only. There's three areas that fundamentally are changing. The first is the what of work. So how is work changing with these new technologies? But then there's also the who is doing the work. And I talked a little bit about the alternative workforce. I'll talk more about that. So who is doing this work? What skills do they need? What capabilities do they need? How do we design their jobs, their roles? How do we design teams? And how do we enable all the people across this talent ecosystem to actually do this work for us? And then the where of the work, and I'll call this the overlooked dimension of the future of work. The where of the workplace is changing too, and when we think about the where, it's not just the physical location, it's also the digital environment that we create and the hours, flexibility of hours, for example. I'll talk about each of these in a little bit now. So the first one is the work. And that has actually a lot to do with reimagining work. I'll share a little bit of some of these statistics that we saw there because I thought it was interesting. So most organizations, vast majority of organizations actually plan to increase the use of AI and cognitive over the next 3 years. So 80%, right? Lots of organizations plan, not surprising. I really want to know who the 20% are that don't do it, but most organizations are planning to increase the use of these new technologies. Most organizations actually just use these technologies to replace human activities. So it's like a replacement scenario. But if you think about it, machines are good at things that are different to what humans are good at. Machines are really good at repetitive, process-oriented, like task-oriented work. They're not good at reading context. They can't do empathy. They can't do collaboration or innovation or ideation. So all of the things that we as people are actually naturally good at and that we enjoy to do because that's who we are as people, machines can't do. So rather than this replacement scenario on how can we just do with less people, basically, organizations need to reimagine what work even is. And only 12% reimagine work to a very large extent based on our study. So if you think about it, 80% plan to increase the use of AI and cognitive, but hardly anybody is actually using these in a thoughtful way and engaging the workforce in this redesign. The design thinking, for example, that we heard about before. How can we involve the workforce in that redesign and reimagining work? Because they know what the work is about, right? We won't know. Like, none of us can know what somebody else's job is, right? Because we haven't done it. So this is really the key to redesigning and reimagining work and making work more human. The next area we wanted to talk about a little bit is the workforce. And that's typically when we thought about talent management, this was the only orientation of talent management, right? It's like, how do we manage the skills, the capabilities, the jobs, the roles that people had? And there's two things that come in here. One of them is this broadening the workforce ecosystem. Who does the work? To also include alternative workers. And what is alternative workers? These are people that work for you that are not on your payroll. So it could be a contractor, a consultant, a gig worker, even the crowd, right? So anybody who is working for you in some capacity who is not on your payroll. And so when we talk about the workforce, we never talk about employees anymore, because we really need to broaden our spectrum to include everybody who does the work for you. So similar stats that we have here, workers, actually 70% of workers in a recent study are looking to do some kind of alternative work for a number of reasons, whether that's to have more money, or whether that's to have more flexibility, or create new experiences and new career development. Workers want to do this, and 55% of organizations actually do leverage this alternative workforce to some extent, but only 6% are extremely strategic about it. So it's more like throwing darts. I can't find an employee, I'm going to go contractor. I couldn't find a contractor, find a consultant. Couldn't find a consultant, I go gig work or something like that, rather than thinking about what's the work to be done and who should do the work. Is it something that's key and core to what we do as an organization? Then it should be an employee. Is it something that's temporary in need? Is it something that's not core to who we are? Maybe we can go alternative workforce. So once you have rethought the workforce environment, or the work continuum, talent continuum, to this open talent continuum, then you need to think about, with this work changing, as we had redesigned the work, what are the skills? What are the mindsets that we may need? How do we put it together in jobs and roles? How do we combine those into teams and work groups? And really, really interestingly and important here is two areas: diversity and inclusion, because this alternative workforce is increasingly diverse, right? Because you can tap into people that might not be able to do full-time work for you, that might only be working part-time. And oftentimes this could be women that care for their children. It could be somebody who does elder care or something like that. So much more diverse and a much broader workforce environment. And then what's the experience that we create for people? And that has to do a lot with their health as well, of course. People won't have an engaging experience if they're not healthy, right? Or if they don't have an engaging experience, they're also not going to be healthy. It goes both ways. So that's the workforce. And then the last is kind of forgotten dimension. And don't take a picture yet, because I'm going to build this up. And I want to do a little exercise with you. So I want to have a show of hands. Who is significantly increasing opportunities for remote work? Like, show of hands. Anybody? Like, yeah, about maybe half or something. And that's what we saw in our study too. 47% actually significantly increased opportunities for remote work. So that's great. That's great for a number of reasons, right? It's great for health. It's great for engagement, because it increases flexibility for you. I've been working remotely for a really, really long time. In fact, I worked a few years ago. I moved to southern Spain, and I worked there completely remotely because I worked with clients here, which also was interesting from a work hours perspective. But with Spain, right? If you work half the night, it's like, night is young. 47% increase opportunities for remote work. Who is increasing opportunities for flexible hours? Show of hands. Just curious, okay? So similar number, 42%. Increasing opportunities for flexible hours. So flexible hours, and we heard a lot about that also from Dr. PAFOW. It's really important for people to have flexibility and also to have to work no matter when it is 100 hours a week, right? But flexible hours are really important too. People are looking for that. But who is significantly considering worker readiness, the readiness of your workforce when you do these workplace redesigns? And when we talk workplace, it's not just, again, like how you lay out your physical workplace. It's all of these things: remote work, flexible hours. Who is really gauging, are your workers and your managers ready for that? And how do you gauge that? Anybody? Nobody. Here, 9%. 9% involve the worker. And if you think about it, why do you do this? Hopefully not just for the cost reason, but also for the value reason and for creating better work environment for people. But if you don't understand where your people are at in terms of redesigning this workplace and redesigning hours, redesigning like remote work and all of that, you won't really get where you need to go. So all of these things, these were the 3 dimensions that we looked at. And now I want to talk a little bit about the how you do it. How do you rethink work for the future and the workforce and the workplace? And what we have come up with is this like ongoing iterative cycle where you start with imagining the possibilities for the future on work, workforce, and workplace. And what's imagine, right? That is not a regular business word that we use. And you might say, well, I can imagine all I want, right? What's imagine really about is creating that vision. Creating that vision with the business, facilitated by HR, but then also bringing in the worker perspective. So really, really key. And that's always what we see in our study. Bringing in the worker perspective is largely overlooked. So funny that all of this is about, in the end of the day, is about the workforce, but how do you bring your workers' perspective into that cycle? So the compose is how you can take apart the workforce, and the workplace, and then put it back together. So that's creating your plan. It could be workforce planning, strategic workforce planning, and we'll hear a lot in this conference too about that. It could be redesigning work, not just jobs, but actually redesigning work. And the reason why I say not just redesigning jobs is we have this notion of super jobs that we came up with at Deloitte in our human capital trends. And what's a super job? Sounds great, right? Everybody wants, I'd like to do a super job. Super jobs are the next generation of hybrid jobs. So if you think about hybrid jobs, were jobs that brought together skills from different areas. So if you think about a software designer, for example, software development is like left brain or whatever, and designer is the design thinking and all of that. So bringing in a different skills that were usually not combined in a job. But super jobs are bringing together previously distinct jobs into a new job. And for one example that and there's hardly any examples, by the way, we looked, and not many organizations have been really thinking about that. But you start with what is new value. If you think about the cost value meaning matrix that we talked about, what could be new value that our customers could create a new meaning and meeting their aspirations? One bank, a New York-based bank, actually did that. So they have financial advisors, of course, and these financial advisors, automation can actually do a lot of what financial advisors used to do, right? Like portfolio modeling and predictions of stock performance or investment performance. So technology can do that much better and faster and cheaper and everything. And rather than saying, okay, we need less financial advisors because we have all these new technologies, this bank actually said, what could be something that our clients could use that they don't get today, that they haven't asked for? And they found out, they determined when they worked with their customers, they could also look for career advice from the same person, from their financial advisor. And so they retrained their financial advisors to also be career coaches for the clients, because if you think about it from the human skills perspective, understanding what people are trying to accomplish, consulting with them, having empathy with them, all of these are the same capabilities, human capabilities. And so they combined the financial advisor with the career advisor. And that made that a super job, which also created new value and new meaning for their customers. So that's the compose area. And then activate. Activate is how you actually do all of these things. And that's what we might have typically called talent management. So it used to be like attract, develop, and retain. This is how do we access all these skills and capabilities? How do we curate experiences that are engaging for people and that create new meaning for them? And how do we engage the workforce for the future? So there's some organizational capabilities that power this future of work. I'm not going to talk a lot about that because we're running a little bit short on time. Of course, you need technology and tools. Analytics really, really key. So I think I don't have to tell you that all of this is impossible without analytics, because otherwise, workforce planning, for example, is workforce guessing, right? So if you don't have analytics, you really don't know where you're going. You can't measure if you're getting there. Analytics, sensing, really key. And then culture and leadership, really, really important, because the culture could either help and leadership could either help all of this or it could inhibit all of this. So here's the framework that I just built up. So you see in the middle, the transformation outcomes, that was the cost, value, and meaning thing. Then we talked about work, workforce, and workplace. Then about the imagine, compose, and activate. And then on the side of it are all of these capabilities and the context that actually enable all of that. So this is our workforce transformation framework. What we'll do next is also we'll do, if you've seen our maturity models, we'll do a 4-level maturity model. We'll talk about how you actually do all of these things. So that's still to come. So I think I'm running very short on time, but I want to tell you a little story on these are the Northern Lights, and I was able to see the Northern Lights many, many years ago when I still lived in Europe, in Norway. It's very, very cold there. It's very, very cold there. And how cold do you think it is at the Northern Lights? It doesn't really matter if it's Celsius or Fahrenheit, because it's very cold. Anybody? 150? Oh. Any other guesses? How cold is it at the Northern Lights? Okay, I'll give you the answer. It's minus 44. Very, very cold. And actually, when we did this study, this is the Net Promoter Score for how much people would recommend their organization's approach to people and talent. Minus 44. Pretty bad, right? Pretty bad. And so when I saw this, I was pretty excited too, because this is such a wake-up call. Because if you have a product that has a minus 44 Net Promoter Score, what do you do with it? You either kill it, which you can't, right? You gotta have people, and you gotta have an approach around people, but you gotta change it around completely. So that's why I was really excited about this. So what this relates to as well is this old approach of talent management is actually not valid anymore. It's too small. It's not about managing. It's about transforming. And it's not about just talent. It's about the workforce and the workplace and the work. So this is a new approach to talent management. We need to broaden our aperture to also think about work, then the workforce, and then the workplace. Here's a great quote as well. Profound transformation of the workforce over the next 5 to 10 years. So that's workforce transformation. We can't just manage talent anymore. We need to transform the workforce for the future of work. So just a few calls to action. Imagine what's possible with work, workforce, and workplace. Humanizing work. Humanizing work, reinventing work, that goes to that as well. So I'm so glad that our presentations align really well. Humanizing work and help humans work better. It goes both ways. And then activating new value and meaning. Move beyond the cost. Go to value and go to meaning as well. Do we have time for a couple of questions?
I have time for a picture.
All right.
So first off, Kathi, thank you very much. Give a round of applause.